changed anthropology. Imagine life without a phone. It's hard to imagine that life was conducted without this conduit of human energy and communication. A few decades ago, that was reality, and anthropology was born and built in that time period. Without cell phones, email, internet, or fax, these brave explorers spent months immersed in another culture and created detailed reports of the people they lived with while deprived of contact with those dear to them. Now, barely 100 years later, anthropologists can create multi-site ethnographic studies by using these magical tools. Technology has changed the common practices of anthropology, including how linguists preserve minority languages, how ethnographers immerse themselves in culture, how cultures have been created and brought closer together by technology. In 2004, a Washington University professor named Patrick Eisenmore wrote a paper about how technology has changed how the preservation of minority language occurs. He commented, analysts often conceive of modern practices of mass mediated communication as fostering linguistic change, most notably the spread of unified, nationalized, standard languages, meaning the most common form of linguistic change is when a country or a government tries to standardize their country's languages into a single language, such as in France, where the Basque language has often been attempted to be eradicated from France, but has maintained itself through a strong and powerful and interesting culture. Because of this, despite the individual government's attempt to completely rid their countries of a second language, the European Union has created computer programs for 4 of these languages in order to preserve and maintain the cultures and languages. They include the Basque French computer program, the Irish English and the Welsh English computer program, and the Catalan Spanish computer program, all of which are used to preserve their culture. Other countries, on their own, without help from the European Union, have long fought to preserve their language and the culture that comes with it, such as Ireland, where students have been required to start learning Irish in school very early on for many years. Technology that might have once been created for a particular purpose, like a video camera that was originally used to seize the moment for memory, or in movies, has been used to facilitate language learning and preservation of cultures. The spread of affordable, accessible, and straightforward technology has helped preserve dozens of languages throughout the globe, such as in the Enduring Language Project from National Geographic, where anthropologists around the world have found dying languages and recorded the last living speakers in order to preserve that language, even though it may not survive. Now, ethnographers were probably much esteemed for their ability to give up all contact with the outside world when they studied the culture. However, cultures anymore are not as cut off from the outside world as they were when anthropology was originally starting. Culturally speaking, most societies have some form of contact with the outside world, whether it be through a running messenger, a cell phone, an email, or a trading partner. Now, however, that communication is much more readily available and much more easily accessible by all peoples. It is often found that even the poorest nations can find a way to facilitate communication from one border to another without a great delay, because communication is a key to a successful and efficiently run government. Though it may not be the most important key, it is an important one nonetheless. P.L. Sutherland, in her 1999 article about the New York City jazz community, talked a lot of about how the phone played a large role in her participant observer character. Although she still conducted a large amount of face-to-face interviews, she wrote of long conversations she would have with women in the jazz community, how the phone played a large part in the culture of that specific subset of society. She also said that the telephone should be used as a primary instead of a secondary form of research, claiming that although people may say it is a distancing tool, to others it might serve as a kind of intimacy because most people won't just give a person their phone number. Therefore, they create a sense of exclusivity when it is given. When Sutherland introduced the idea of letting the telephone have a more starring role in ethnographic studies, however, she also was mostly speaking in regards to large multi-site studies, or in a largely telephone-oriented society, since that is one of the primary modes of communication. She also commented, though, that it is very hard for ethnographers to get a clear-cut sense of release and of understanding that they are being recorded and being used for research at that time period when a person is on the phone. So she said that although an ethnographer may not need to rely completely on the telephone, it is very much a tool of current ethnographic studies because of the distance that might be between in the sites in multi-site ethnographic studies, and also because large societies, especially in certain cultures that are being studied anymore, rely so much on the telephone for their communication, their business, and cultural experiments that they may have. Technology has played a very large part in the evolution of ethnographic reports by allowing the participant observer to not be focused on every detail, to allow them to create a less artificial place in the society they are studying. Now, ultimately, the progression of the internet and its inclusivity has created a culture that is carried out entirely in cyberspace. Samuel L. Wilson and Leighton C. Peterson talk about the culture of these societies in their 2002 article for the Annual Review of Anthropology. The most striking part of their article is a frank assessment of people's ability to sink into a world outside the physical. A person can sit in Starbucks and communicate with their family who is over 1,000 miles away with the click of a button and the tapping of their keyboard. For that reason, the world has become a smaller and smaller place in regards to communication. Moreover, this phenomenon has created a subset of physical society that has formed its own offshoots of culture on the internet. In Wilson and Peterson, it is discussed how the internet has been used to create social change, further political agendas, and provide entertainment through games and media. Now, this culture has created its own language, ethical code, and societal norms. With this new culture, there is also formed a completely new way of classifying people. A notable geek in past years was often ridiculed for his or her fashion and glasses, has become the CEO of the future, smart and talented in the world of computers, and the person everyone turns to for the next generation of technology. The physical social hierarchy has changed to adapt to a virtual chain of command. Anthropologists have had to adapt their way of studying cultures to include this pecking order for consideration of the outward caste system, because the inward caste system of the cyberspace world has become a physical expression. Years ago, someone like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates would have been considered the nerd or the geek and laughed at and teased and often bullied. But now they are two of the richest men in the world because they have used their brain, their talent in the world of computers to create a new kind of technology that people are seeking out constantly. Now, these processes have all led to one item: globalization. In linguistic preservation, people around the world can learn an almost forgotten language that is put online to help revitalize the dialect and create a connection between themselves and their original culture. And online cultures spring up by the dozen every few months and fade just as quickly when the next fad enters the picture. Fieldwork in anthropology has had to adapt to the growing reliance on technology around the world, the prominence of that equipment in the society being studied. These changes have had both the effect of creating a smaller world in communication and a larger gulf between the first world countries, the third world countries attempting to imitate their more prosperous brethren. Globalization has also created a larger society based on violence because affronts are less likely to be addressed diplomatically because there is less of an interlude in which the diplomats can cool down than in previous eras. This constant back and forth between governments or even people due to the ease of access to each other is both helpful and damaging to the global community. While it might allow for more cross-cultural interaction, it's creating a greater mixture of the cultures, almost welding some cultures together irreparably as one. This means that two cultures may be separated by thousands of miles physically. However, their ability to communicate with each other and to spread and mix their cultures together has made them become referred to as one culture instead of multiple cultures, as can be viewed in African American and African culture, in which African Americans identify with African culture, even though they are thousands of miles apart and may never have visited the country that they call their home and the culture that they call their own. Primarily, technology has created a rift between the old school of anthropology, where face-to-face was valued above all else, and the new school of anthropology that has tailored its work to include the new devices into its arsenal. Technology is a wonderful tool, but a double-edged sword, both creating and destroying divisions between cultures. However it is looked at, this new digital world has irrevocably changed the face of anthropology and how it preserves culture, perceives culture, and studies culture.